Welcome to episode 14 of the Civil War Breakfast Club. I am your co-host, Mary, and I am joined by the awesome Darren Weeks.
Wow, I don't know who this awesome Darren Weeks is, but hey.
Also known as Tattooed Diva Braggart.
Yeah, I gotta be appropriate today. Gotta be appropriate. You are Chattanooga. Jeez, I wonder what we're talking about. My thing says brag, and your thing says Chattanooga. I suppose we're talking about what? Monocracy?
We might be talking about the Chattanooga campaign. Notice how we didn't say the battles for Chattanooga. The
Ooh, there's
Chattanooga
a distinction.
campaign.
There is a distinction. So we will definitely. This is going to be, dare I say, another multi-part episode, Mary?
Yeah, probably 2, but it could possibly be 3. We're going to see how it goes.
A 3? A trilogy?
A threesome?
Well,
that would be a first for the podcast.
E.P. Alexander did fight at this battle, so I suppose.
He did, so it's possible.
Certainly did. Wow, okay. Ooh, look at you coming in hot right off the bat. Anyway, so how's everything going? I haven't talked to you in a little while. So how are things going? We had a good podcast last week. We talked about Sherman's march to the sea.
Yep, part 1 of that.
Part 1 of that. So this is very confusing.
Which that actually could become a threesome as well, as we've talked about on social media. Our 3-parters are not going to be trilogies.
No, I don't think that. I guess not. Wow. Anyway, so we had a lot of fun with that. A lot of people listened to that. We had a fantastic Facebook Live on Saturday.
Yep. Thanks to everybody who came out to that and was with us a lot of people were with us for nearly 3 hours, which was awesome. We had some great discussion going on.
Our longest one, I think. And there was a lot of good talk. And I mean, we can mention we have the round table tomorrow, but it'd be by the time this drops,
the round table will have happened.
So I hope everyone enjoyed the round table on Wednesday. It was a great conversation. Thanks for everybody stopping by. Sorry what Mary said. It's embarrassing, but that's just the way it is. So, but that's always a good time. So we're always going to do that the third Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7. So we will definitely do that. But anyway, we have some. But don't look out now, Mary. We're talking about Chattanooga. See what I did there?
What are we? Very good. But what are we drinking first?
Oh, that's right. Well, you with your priorities. Well, Canadians first.
All right. So I am drinking Hazy State from Collective Arts Brewing. And the reason I got this one was because it's got a half moon on it. And my second beer is Eclipse from Lost Craft, which also has a half moon on it. The reason I did that is because my boy OO makes an appearance tonight. But my mug is General George Henry Thomas because he also is involved tonight too.
Ooh, a double Mary General.
Yep.
I'm drinking Lucid Dreams Milkshake IPA. And it's a company out of Maine. That in Howard again, Maine. So
exactly, Howard.
And I'm drinking from my Abraham Lincoln mug. 2 reasons. One, tomorrow is 2 days from now is the Gettysburg Address anniversary. And more importantly, I don't have a Thomas mug. So I have no choice. So that's pretty much what it is.
I wanted to drink out of a Howard mug tonight or a General Hooker mug tonight, because they're both involved in the goings on.
I gotta find a Hooker mug and a Howard mug.
You know what? I would drink out of a Braxton Bragg mug because then people would know when I was in a really fucking bad mood.
Ooh, you?
So,
bad
so
mood?
then therefore you would probably say I would drink out of it all the time, right?
I didn't say that. That's... That was not saying stop reading my mind.
I do have the General Mead mug.
You got a bunch of good mugs. We got a bunch of good mugs. But anyway, yeah. So I think we're going to have some fun with this episode tonight. God knows it's another C-word battle campaign, Chattanooga. We know how much you love. There you go. Chickamauga, we're up the bat a few weeks ago. This is kind of an extension of Chickamauga. This is the Union strikes back. If you're looking at Star Wars terms with this one, if you want to split it down. So interesting. We're going to talk pretty much the beginning of it. We're going to lead up to it, and we're going to get to a point. We're going to stop off at a really, really good, literally a cliffhanger.
Yep.
Literally, we have to pay attention. Listen to the end of this one.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it will be a cliffhanger. I don't know about you. Like I went into this thinking this is going to be a clusterfuck because that was what Chickamauga was. But actually, I know we were talking about this before, but some of these battles that are happening in the lead up to Lookout Mountain, like I understand them a lot better than other battles in the Civil War for whatever reason. But like you and I were saying, we were originally going to do this as just talking a little bit about Lookout Mountain, but then we discovered that what we're going to talk about is like each battle that happens is leading to Lookout Mountain.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about this one is you think about Chattanooga, you think about Lookout Mountain, you think of Missionary Ridge,
Yep.
you think of the basics, you think of the
Mm-hmm.
the fighting above the clouds, you think of all the
Yep.
like fantastic vista from Point Lookout overlooking the Tennessee River and the city of
Yep.
Chattanooga. But what people don't realize, so maybe people listening to this probably do realize, but there's so much that builds up to it, leading up to all this stuff. And again, it's a situation where the Union Army puts themselves into a corner, and almost like a mini version of Vicksburg a little bit in
Yep.
reverse.
Yep.
And we'll get into that, but explaining how that worked out. It again explains another screw up by your boy Braxton. It does. You have to. I mean, but you know what though? This one talks about a lot of things, because this one, if you look at the beginning of this battle, a lot of people don't look good, Mary. They don't. And like the people you
No.
would think they look good, like Grant doesn't look good in this one. You
No,
know,
Grant
Sherman.
actually throughout this whole campaign, Grant and Sherman come out of it. Like
Yeah, Sherman not so much.
yeah, this is the one campaign where I come out of it thinking, as much as I love and respect those two, they did some real like dick moves to a couple people, namely Hooker and General Thomas.
Yeah, and we'll talk. Well, we'll talk about that. Hey, good point. We'll talk about that. Obviously, what's interesting about this, as we get into more details, is you almost have dueling dumpster fires on both sides with the
Exactly.
generals. You've got the Union politics and the Confederate politics simultaneously swirling the bowl at the same time.
It's like
And
two nighttime dramas. Think Dallas and Knots
Dynasty.
Landing.
Oh, not. I was going to go Dynasty. You got to go Dynasty there, Mary.
Well, I went Knots Landing because it's like it's the
Oh,
playoff of Dallas, right? Because Gary Ewing.
I don't think I know who you
I'm
are
going
anymore.
through the whole brother thing.
Are you dancing?
No, 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 I'm not.
Okay, well, better get that looked at. Better get that checked out then. But anyway, so let's take a step back a little bit, okay? And where we left you a few weeks ago at the Battle of Chickamauga. So Longstreet pushes back Thomas, pushes back Rosecrans through Chickamauga, back over the river into the city of Chattanooga.
Yeah.
And so they stay there for a little while, and they really go to build the defenses. And so what you have is um, William Rosecrans. He's going to build a 3-mile line within the city using the Union Works, Fort Negley, and Fort Wood rather. And he's going to use the Confederate breastworks, for lack of a better phrase. He's going to pretty much move in. He's going to hermit crab the breastworks.
Yeah.
Is what he's going to do. And what unfortunately his biggest issue is, and this is the biggest theme for this first half of this Chattanooga thing, is the supplies are screwed up right off the bat. So he puts himself into a corner where he's got very, very, very limited supplies. And more importantly, he has no real supply line. We'll talk more in details. He's got the one supply line that comes through Walden's Ridge, which is about 60 miles away.
And it's fucking tough to get to.
Well, that's the thing. It's a very misleading thing. It says Walden's Ridge. You think of Cemetery Ridge. This is a friggin' mountain.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is a gigantic, with shitty roads. Anybody who's driven to Boston thinks Store Road Drive on a Friday.
Or
That's pretty much what this
Canada.
is. Oh, yeah, exactly. The Eskimos and the
well, they sent Montgomery Meigs. How do you say his name? Because Meigs. Okay, good. He ends up going down there to check on how things are going at one point, and he's got to go over Walden's Ridge to get there, obviously, because that's the only way you can get into Chattanooga. And he said, "I had no conception when I left Washington. I never traveled on such roads."
Yeah, I mean, it's just a shit. Go through the mountains, real tough roads, and Rosecrans is still struggling with the loss of Chickamauga. I mean, you had that fantastic quote from Lincoln where he says he was confused and stunned like a duck hit on the head. A great quote. Great, and he was still having an issue with it. So he's sitting there in Chattanooga now, and he's obviously dazed and confused. Who knows what's going on? But his rations are low. He's having horses die, mules die. These soldiers are down to basically a couple of pieces of bread and like a quarter pound of pork every 3 days.
Yeah, they're on quarter rations by one point.
And name it all, the guy in charge of the Confederate cavalry, guy, Joseph Wheeler,
Mhm.
he's out there wreaking havoc. He destroys 800 wagons, burns
Yep.
them.
Yeah.
They probably, the food, the supplies, all the, Avon catalogs, everything's gone. So now Lincoln is sitting in D.C. now, and he's oh shit. Now he knows he has to relieve Chattanooga because
Mhm.
this isn't going to work. And so he orders Stanton, go get Joe Hooker, get his 20,000 men, get him to Chattanooga quick.
And that was amazing how they were sitting in Lincoln's cabinet, and Stanton is like, I can get those men there in 5 days. So he's going to send Hooker with my boy Howard's 11th Corps.
Yep.
And Slocum's 12th Corps. They're going to go by train to Chattanooga. And Stanton's like,
Wait, hold on. The Chattanooga choo-choo?
yeah.
Oh.
Actually, the one brewery that we're going to go to in Chattanooga, it's right next to where the Chattanooga Choo Choo is. And I'm
Hey
not
there,
sure.
is that the Chattanooga choo-choo? There's a song you won't get stuck out of your head. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. I love Glenn
Anyway.
Miller, but thanks. Anyway, so Stanton says I can get these men there in 5 days, and Halleck is like, fuck that, it's going to take 40. What is he, Moses going through the fucking desert?
Oh, he's a government employee. Of course,
Is that what you think? Well, hey, it's not Moses.
No, I'm not a Canadian government employee. I don't want to piss you off, okay? Piss off all those DQ employees in kindergarten getting mad at me now if I make fun of them. So,
so anyway, so Hooker and the 11th and 12th Corps, they end up getting to Chattanooga in 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
So Stanton, I mean, this is one area where Stanton was like, he does deliver. I mean, it's not the 5 days, but it's not the 40 that Halleck was saying it was going to be.
No, but if you're Joe Hooker, I think at that point, this is a few months after Chancellorsville, got fired. I think I would probably do it too.
Same with Howard. Howard's probably like, yeah, I got to redeem myself.
He was reading the Twitter and found out people are pissed at him about Chancellorsville, and so I better get over there. That's what Howard was doing.
Fuckers think I retreat.
But you know who else gets called to Chattanooga?
Sherman.
No. Yes, but who else?
Burnside does too.
Hitting all the who else is coming?
Besides? Grant.
Hey, look at that. You got it. So Grant gets called there as well. And what's going to basically happen is Grant's going to come in. He's going to be made the military commander of the military division of Mississippi, for lack of a better phrase. He's in charge of the West, but that's the official phrase for him. So Grant shows up there on September 29th. He tells Thomas what's the deal. Thomas has that great quote, "I will hold this town until I starve." Mm-hmm. So he was a big guy, so it'll probably take a little while, probably realistically.
But there's the story of when Grant was on the train, though, and he's handed those two letters, right? Mm-hmm. And one is to keep Rosecrans in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, and the other is to put Thomas in charge of the Army in the Cumberland. Therefore, Rosecrans is no longer going to be in charge anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's Grant that makes that decision. Mm-hmm. Although I think in his memoirs, Grant might say like, "No, I didn't do it. Stanton did it." It's like,
yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, and the two of them, I don't think Stanton or Grant wanted to make the decision.
Well, I mean, if you make a mistake, you're basically gone. That's how it was that era. Yeah. But there's a perception, and this is what the perception that Grant perpetrates was that Rosecrans was happy sitting in the city, wasn't going to do anything, and then it switched to Rosecrans was going to leave, and it was all messed up. And Rosecrans actually, with William Baldy Smith, came up with a plan for the supply line, and it'll come out later on. But before that happens, Grant gets there, and what does he do? Gets rid of him.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
he does.
He does. Yeah, he picks the letter that is basically Rosecrans has to resign. Well, I shouldn't say resign, but he's gone. So Thomas is in charge of the Army of the Cumberland at this point. But then Grant and Rosecrans have what probably is a fucking awkward meeting on the train.
Yeah,
the two of them didn't like each other that much at all. But that's where Grant finds out what Rosecrans' plan was, that he actually had a plan to open the supply line that, as you said, he had planned with who was the engineer for the Army of the Cumberland, which was William Baldy Smith. They had it all planned out what they were going to do. Now, there was one point where Rosecrans did send a wire to Washington that said, I don't know how much longer we can hold this. And that's what started making them paranoid. But
Yeah, it said it's 6 days of rations.
yeah, but he never, like he said, I don't know how much longer we can hold 6 days of rations. He never said he was going to leave. But I think
That'll
the
come out afterwards.
administration thought like, shit, this guy's going to leave. But Rosecrans told Grant, I was never going to leave. I just need to figure out how to open up the cracker line.
Yeah, and the cracker line we'll talk about here in a little bit, but they're gonna get rid of Rosecrans at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna move him out, and U.S. Grant, he's got a habit of basically getting rid of people he sees as rivals, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just does. But what's interesting about the Grant Rosecrans thing was clearly personal. It was clearly personal, and people don't realize that Grant and Rosecrans were actually good friends back at West Point.
Mm-hmm.
There's that fantastic story where when they were both in school, the cadets pulled that prank on Grant, and they made him guard overnight a water pump. You got to guard this for the whole night.
Oh, fuck.
And Rosecrans was the officer, was a cadet officer on duty. He comes up to him and says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "They told me up to guard this." He goes, "Fuck that, go to bed. You just go to bed." This is if they're fuck with you, go to bed. So that began a strong friendship between those two. So you fast forward down to 1862 at Pittsburgh Landing, when Grant spoke of Rosecrans, he was a warm personal friend, one of the most ablest and purest of men, both in motive and action. That's the quote that Grant used to describe Rosecrans. They were boys. I mean, they were great friends.
Mm.
And he also, John Rawlins had said, and this is according to Rawlins, he says Grant told him that the only two officers he would ever serve under would be Sherman and Rosecrans. The only two. So that this is how close they were at this time. Okay. So this is high praise. This is going back and forth. But it all goes south. It all goes south in the fall of 1862 at the Battle of Iuka. Okay.
Right.
Battle of Iuka, it's a situation where basically they're attacking. This is going to September 1863, and they're going to attack Sterling Price and about 12,000 rebels. Grant has Edward Ord and he has Rosecrans. Those are his two guys. They're going to attack. Something happens and it gets all fucked up, where Grant allegedly changes the battle plan, but doesn't tell Ord or Rosecrans. So they're both walking off. Rosecrans, ultimately what happens is they're waiting. The Confederates leave Iuka on their own. They just retreat. Whatever, we're out of here. They left. But Rosecrans wrote an official report that he went 36 hours, didn't hear a word from Grant. No one word. 36 hours.
Oh my God.
That's 3 days here in America. I don't know how it is up there. That's a long time.
You have to factor in the exchange rate on the money for that.
It's probably like 2.5 days. Yeah. So basically, Rosecrans writes, he says, where in the name of God is Grant? They can't find Grant. There's no report. They can't find him. You know what they think he was doing?
Yeah.
He was right. They think he was throwing back a little grandpa's old cough medicine.
Yeah. That's
what they think he was doing. So the operation fails. Grant takes no ownership of it. Doesn't at all. He basically just says, at the end of the day, Iuka was taken. There was no real battle. It was just taken by it. But then what happens? The reports come out that Grant was drunk and he was blacked out for 3 days. Okay. The report comes from a reporter, by the name of William Bickham from the Cincinnati Enquirer. So right off the bat, nothing good comes from Ohio. We know that, right?
Grant's from Ohio. So is Sherman.
Okay. Well, see, this is where we're going with this, right? So Bickham has a source, that says that basically he was drunk the whole time.
Wow.
This gets put in the newspaper, okay? Right. Everyone assumes the source is who? Rosecrans. Mm-hmm. Because Rosecrans, guess what? Is buddies with this guy Bickham.
Wow.
So he writes a story. So basically Rawlins has this quote, and he says, "I hope for his honor that he is not party to this hellish attempt besmirch General Grant, but the evidence is such that he must be privy to the whole devilish scheme. So now Rollins is saying, yeah, it had to have been Rosecrans. And then now what happens is the relationship goes really south really quick. And then Sherman, because they're close with Grant, Sherman basically has a quote. He says, Rosecrans would sacrifice his brother if he stood in the way of his popular renown. So that's the stuff that is in the background with Grant and Rosecrans.
Which is good to know for this to.
Yeah, I mean, so who knows? Look, who knows? I mean, Rosecrans is probably an opportunist. There's no question about it. But if you're a Grant and this is going on and you've got a chance to whack this guy for what he did, you're going to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And Grant's got his own agenda by this point. You know, he's going to Chattanooga and he wants to, in his head, he's got that he wants Sherman. He already knows he's going to bring Sherman down. He wants Sherman to have this victory. So the victory can be on him and the two of them can have it. Like, I mean, I love Grant, but I think what we're going to see in these episodes that we do about Chattanooga is that Grant is not a complete angel. He's a bit of a dick.
No, he definitely does. I mean, you know, so Grant gets there. First thing he does is his priority is opening the supply line.
Yep.
Has to be done. It's got to be done, right?
Absolutely should be.
And so he takes the plan that Baldy Smith and Rosecrans come up with and basically takes it and approves it.
Yep.
This is the famous cracker line plan. So basically, we'll talk more about that. But before we do, let's flip the coin and see what old Braxton's doing.
Yeah. So Braxton Bragg. We all know there's some drama with this, and this is what I like. I sometimes refer to this as being like, it's like Dallas. Like it's that level of fucking stupid.
Two Dallas
drama.
References today. You mean the Cowboys? You mean the TV show? They're both messes.
The TV show, which is one of my favorite TV shows, the old Dallas too. I love JR. And Sue Ellen.
And this trip to the early 80s is brought to you by the Silver Breakfast Club.
So anyway, after Chattanooga, like immediately afterwards, like Bragg does have a chance. There is a window that he has that he could overtake Rosecrans and the Union Army, even though they are entrenched around Chattanooga. He doesn't do it. He's getting reports from his cavalry, Wheeler and Forrest at the time. You know, Forrest is telling him we could do this, but he doesn't do it. So this begins basically, I would liken it to a kind of figurative Godfather purging of people that
go against the family business, Mary.
Yeah, well, guess what? Bragg is about to do a huge purge.
He certainly is.
It begins on September 30th, actually. So we're talking about 10 days after Chattanooga or Chickamauga's happened. You know, Bragg has this sort of quote unquote victory, but it's not really a victory because he hasn't driven, like Rosecrans is just sitting there. Like he has not won the city, he's not taken it back, and that's what he's supposed to do. So Bragg does not like Nathan Bedford Forrest, but I mean, who does? I don't. I think many people do. But he, Bragg just doesn't like him because he thinks he's wandering around the countryside being the Jeb Stuart of the West, whatever. He's being a complete diva. So he takes some of his men from him, and he also puts Wheeler in charge. And Forrest gets wind of this on September 30th, and he's pissed. So he walks into Bragg's tent, and he tears into him. And I had wanted to take what he said to him and try and put it in modern terminology. But I think when you hear it, you'll agree that it is best left in what he said to him on September 30th, 1863. And this is what he does. This is what Forrest says. I have withstood your meanness as long as I intend. You have played the part of a damned scoundrel, and you are a coward. And if you were any part of a man, I would slap your jaws and force you to resent it. You may as well not issue any more orders for me, for I will not obey them. And I will hold you personally responsible for any further indignities you endeavor to inflict upon me. If you ever again try to interfere with me or cross my path, it will be at the peril of your life. That is the ultimate fuck you, SMD, don't mess with me ever again.
I mean, it is kind of funny to hear Nathan Bedford Forrest basically say, "You were mean to me."
I was
I mean,
took your
let's
meanness well long enough.
hope he didn't hit him with a pillow fight. Oh, okay. Anyway, no, I know. I'll just show myself out.
But just the fact he's throwing in this, like, if you're any part of a man. So I don't see you as being a man. Like it's kind of the ultimate insult you can throw at anybody. And after that, you don't hear much about Forrest in this campaign because Bragg's like, whatever. Bragg just sees him as being gone, doesn't have to deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what happens, like, for the, like, this is kind of setting the tone for what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, I definitely wanted to start off with that one.
That's a good one. I mean, and Bragg, I mean, he has problems with so many people throughout this. You mentioned the purge. I mean, this is a guy.
Oh
He fires Thomas Hardiman. Blames him for the failures at Chickamauga.
yep, he's
He
arresting
fires.
Polk.
Yeah, fires Leonidas Polk, sends him off
Yep.
to Atlanta of all places. He sends him
Yep.
to Atlanta.
Well,
Um,
he arrests Polk,
mhm.
and then after the purge happens, Polk gets sent. That's when he gets sent to, like, Mississippi and then to Atlanta. But Hardy is gone by this point because he can't stand being around Bragg.
Yeah, I mean it's a very common thing. I mean, and then fast forward to a couple of days later, October 4th, right?
Mm.
You've got 12 Confederate generals. They petition Jefferson Davis to get Bragg the F out of here.
Yeah, and
They were, this is led by D.H. Hill and Simon Buckner.
yeah,
He says, you need to remove this guy. This guy needs to go in the corner, and
yeah, go
okay,
fuck yourself. And
exactly.
Longstreet signatures on there. I think Breckinridge's is.
Yeah.
As well as Claiborne's. Now, one thing I read about Claiborne is the reason he signed it is because his men were so short on rations, and he couldn't stand to see them suffering. They were like, they're eating an ear of corn a day, and that's why he did it. And also too, like, Claiborne, I think, was probably convinced by a few of the other generals who were like, "Hey, this guy's from Ireland. He doesn't understand the politics. Let's just tell him to sign this shit," right? Because Claiborne wasn't fully understanding what was going on.
Yes, sign here, you get a free box of Lucky Charms.
Yep.
There you go. Oh, give me that pen right now.
But yeah, the point is like, there's this petition that goes out about them. And then Jeff Davis ends up coming to Chattanooga to have a little bit of a team building exercise.
Yeah, think about that. So he's in Richmond, we assume, going to this, and he sees what's going on, and he gets this letter. He's like, "You got to be shitting me."
Yeah.
So he actually goes all the way to Chattanooga to go meet with these guys, and he sits and personally hears their complaints, every single one of them. And you know what he does after all that?
He pats Bragg on the head and says, "It's okay."
He does nothing. He lets him deal with it. He lets Bragg retaliate against D.H. Hill and Simon Buckner.
Yeah.
He sits there and says, basically, you know what? You're still my guy. Do you know how pissed off that must have made those other guys, and how embarrassed they must have been?
Okay. So after this meeting, General St. John Liddell, who did not have a high opinion of Bragg at all, he goes to Bragg and basically tells him, "Dude, you need to calm down." So think of that Taylor Swift song. That is the theme song of what is going on in the Army of Tennessee. You know the one I'm talking about?
Thank God, no.
You need to calm down. You're being too
loud.
loud.
Yeah, God, jeez, forgot about that.
Are
yes,
you
I'm
okay?
sorry. I knew you were going to sing on this. I knew it was a matter of time.
He tells.
I just met you.
No. Basically tells Bragg to stop the drama, and Bragg is having none of that. He turns to Liddell and says, "I want to get rid of such generals. Let them send in their resignations. I shall accept every one without hesitation." Except he doesn't get them. So this is when he starts to do his basically passive aggressive, figurative Godfather purge, where he ends up. So Hindman and Polk are gone. Polk's going to Mississippi, eventually to Atlanta, where he meets a bad end with some artillery in a few months. Hardy comes back. D.H. Hill ends up going to North Carolina. And then Bragg takes some other men, like someone like Walker, and he elevates them. And then others, he disperses their commands, he demotes them, and everything else. He does all this underhanded stuff because he's just like, whatever the fuck. Like he's at war more with his commanders than he is with the Union Army right
Yeah,
now.
and we'll find out as this goes on how little respect these guys had for him. So when it's all said and done, he's left with the Army of Tennessee. He's got James Longstreet, okay, who's got Lafayette McLaws and Minka Jenkins, who's replacing John Bell Hood, who's still in the disabled list.
He's on the DL.
You know, William Hardee. He's got John Jackson, who's replacing Benjamin Cheatham. Patton Anderson. He's got the great States Rats Gist.
States Rats.
Right. And then, of course, the other army's got John Breckinridge. So he's got Patrick Claiborne, Alex Stewart, Carter Stevenson, and William Bates. So he ends up, at the end of the day, he's got about 50,000 guys. Now, the army of Grant's army is coming piecemeal. Sherman's still not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But when he gets there, he's going to have Sherman, who's going to come with the 15th Corps with Frank Blair. He's going to have he's going to have the 17th, the second division, the 17th.
Yep.
He's going to have Joseph Hooker, who's going to come, part of the Army of Cumberland. He's going to have OO, the 11th Corps, Howard.
Oh.
He's going to have you have 12th Corps with John, second division with John Geary. He's going to be under Hooker. We'll hear about him here in a little while. Army of the Cumberland with your boy George the Rock Thomas.
Yep.
Snow at the Rock is cooking. 4th Corps with Gordon Granger. 14th Corps with John Palmer. And then, of course, he's got a total of about 72,000 guys. So big Union Army, bunch of big armies coming to the dance floor. And they're slowly getting there. So Hooker, he's gonna be the next one who's gonna show up, because Sherman's gonna be off in a little while. We'll hear about him in a little while.
Yeah.
Right. So Hooker shows up. He's got the 11th Corps under Oliver Otis Howard. Have you heard of him? Oliver Otis Howard?
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Might be my favorite boy.
Yeah, he's a New England guy. Is he from Maine?
Yeah. So one of my favorite New Englanders.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good. Obviously, Tom Brady's the other one. We can talk about that. Anyway, I hate that. But Oliver Otis Howard, he's going to guard the railroad station from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to Bridgeport, Alabama, which is going to be the road to genesis of their supplies. So Bridgeport, Alabama is really important. 12th Corps under Slocum. He's going to be going to the Lookout Valley, along with John Geary, which is going to be very important when we talk a little bit later about some of the small battles that are going to be coming up down the road. Yep. So that's pretty much what's going on with that. Certainly weather did slow Hooker. He finally made it, but we talked about the conditions, the roads. He finally gets there. And he basically is going to take him and he's going to work on this plan, this supply plan. So he's going to move him to Browns Ferry. And he's going to, even though he's not even there yet, he's going to start moving his guys there. And we're going to talk about the Browns Ferry here in detail in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But basically what this is, he's going to send, in a nutshell, he's going to send Brigadier General William Hazen and Brigadier General John Turchin to basically help open up this line. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a fascinating story. It really, really is. Yeah. At Browns Ford. So basically, I've not been to Chickamauga, but I've seen it. I've seen pictures. Okay, so I could. No, if you're standing on Lookout Mountain, basically Browns Ford is the Tennessee River on the left-hand side. So you go all the way to the left. So basically, it's really what's going to connect them to their supply line. They have to have it, and you're going to have some people guarding there. You're going to have William C. Oates from the 15th Alabama.
Yeah,
is going to be guarding it.
Fame.
Yeah, so
later governor of Alabama,
from Platte County, Alabama.
Yeah,
that's where he's from. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So they have to open up the Browns Ford. So fast forward now to October 27th, 1863. Okay, they're going to open this thing. They're going to call it the Cracker Line. Okay, they must have crackers.
Yeah.
Okay, so they got to open the supply line for the Army because it's on the verge of starvation. So basically, they're going to go to a place called Ross's Landing, which is an old Indian name. Yep. Before the Cherokee got kicked out of Chattanooga. That's where it was. That's where it was, unfortunately. A little bit of a history there. So basically, General William Hazen, another New Englander, Mary. Mm-hmm. He's from Vermont. Big Ben and Jerry's guy.
Yep.
From Vermont. Okay. They're basically going to be tasked basically to get there and help these things. So they're going to get 50 pontoon boats. Again, the pontoons. We keep hearing about pontoons.
Yeah.
in 2 big barges. They're going to take 1,400 Union soldiers in a bunch of supplies at midnight. They're going to put them on the boats, and they're going to put them down to Brown's Ferry, which is a little landing spot.
And that's Hazen's men that are going.
This is Hazen's, right?
Hazen's are going down there in the pontoon. Yep.
Right. Turchin's going to show up in a little while.
Overland across Moccasin Point.
Yep. So they leave at 3 o'clock in the morning. So they're on their way. They use the darkness. They use the fog to mask them. They're basically floating down the river, right under the rebel cannons on Lookout Mountain. So basically, this, you can call hyperbole, you can call it whatever you want. This might be the most important covert action in the entire Civil War, in my opinion.
It is. I was listening to a lecture today about this, and they said this Brown's Ferry is what is setting everything off to happen for Lookout Mountain. And the other thing too to remember for this is weather is working in the Union Army's favor, much like it did for the New England Patriots the other night. But much like it will.
Nice segue, Mara. Nice segue.
Yeah, but much like it will for the Battle of Lookout Mountain as well, which we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Yep. And so basically it's one of those must-haves for the Union Army. They are starving, they're out of rations, they have nothing to do. They have nowhere to go, so they're stuck. So they're going to basically, with Chattanooga literally hanging in the balance for the Union Army, they're going to make this run. And John Churchin, he's going to meet them there. He's going to march his guys overland. They're going to get to a place called Moccasin Bend, which is a bend. Looks like a moccasin. That's why they call it that, which is just on the base of the bottom of Lookout Mountain. He's also going to have about 700 of Hazen's men that couldn't fit on the boats. I guess they couldn't all fit on the boat. So they must have played musical chairs, and whoever's left over had to walk. That's probably what happened exactly. So they all meet there. They get to Brown's Ferry. They're basically ferried across the pontoon boats. They're supposed to now it's 4 a.m. They're supposed to have some kind of signal fire, and it doesn't happen. Nothing. It's not a perfect world, but they were able to establish the beachhead at Brown's Ferry. That's the important thing. So they're getting them all there. 23rd Kentucky U.S. Infantry basically is on the east side and the west side of Brown's Ferry. And within about an hour, they have this whole beachhead set up. So now they got something set up. Just beyond the beachhead, sleeping, is William C. Oates, who finally stopped running from Little Round Top. So that's where he ended up. Okay.
Yet he claimed that if he could have taken Little Round Top, the Army of Northern Virginia would have won Gettysburg and would have won the Civil War.
Oh, there's no question. Absolute slam dunk. No lost cause there at all, but absolutely what happened. So he basically, they literally catch him sleeping, the 15th Alabama. So he's, to your point, he's a future governor of Alabama. And he, interesting guy, William C. Oates.
Yeah, he is.
Do you know what this is going off the track a little bit about him, but he grew up in the countryside in Pike, Alabama, and he learned to read, became a lawyer. I guess something happens where he was working at his father's pub one day, and he beat this guy upside the head with a stick and thought he killed him. So he left town, and he ended up down in Texas, of all places, and he got either gambling or drinking. He got in a fight with some local gun dealer or some. And he was going to get up at dawn, OK Corral shootout, like Biff Tannen, right? On it, he really was. And so apparently the night before this battle, this duel, somebody got down to him and said, the guy you hit didn't die, so you're not wanted for anything. You can get back. And so he came back, which is probably pretty good because the guy he was going to fight was like a really good. Wow. I don't know what the phrase is, like an Aaron Burr type situation. So he might have got killed that next morning. So he finally gets back. He forms a local militia because he did, and ended up climbing through the ranks of the 15th Alabama. He ended up becoming a lawyer and then the governor, but that's his whole story. So there you go. So basically he ends up again having a tough time with this. Oates hears Hayes' men arriving. He's got like a couple hundred people. He's got 300 people against 1,400 now of Hazen's guys. So I'll let you do the math on that one, but it doesn't end too well. There's a really cool story where, because it was really early, they couldn't see, and he didn't want the Hazen's guys to see the barrel flashes.
Yeah.
So he would tell them, do not shoot until you put the barrel right against the stomach of the guys.
I
And
heard that today in a
right?
lecture, and it was like, holy fuck, the
So
hell.
he would wait. It reminded me a lot. You know what it reminded me a lot of was the Iron Brigade at Herbst Woods and Gettysburg.
Yeah.
They said,
Yeah.
right, same deal, but not to the stuff. They would stick the gun right in your belly and then shoot because they didn't want to see the flash, the muzzle.
Oh.
You know, well, the good news is it didn't work too bad because it didn't really matter. Oates himself gets shot in the thigh. You know, he gets hurt.
Yeah.
And ends up the 50th Alabama does fall back. Hayes' men does strengthen and does open the supply line. So they finally open up the cracker line right there. In my opinion, just my opinion, probably right, but still my opinion, okay? The second they open up the cracker line, the battle's over.
Oh, it
Chattanooga
is.
was done.
It absolutely
it's over.
is. It absolutely
Everything,
is.
right? Everything from that point is a waste of time because once the supply line was open, the Union was not losing that battle.
Well, this is like Brown's Ferry. I say, it's not only a victory for the Union with opening the supply line, but it's where Braxton Bragg, he realizes how truly fucked he is, because the Union goes from a quarter ration to like a third to a half to 2/3 to full, like very quickly. They get back up to where they need to be. And even though like they call it the cracker line after hardtack, and even though it's the hardtack, they've never been more happy to have that. But not only that, they can finally start feeding their animals again too. Because when Grant arrives in Chattanooga, like he sees all these dying mules and horses. And that's when he realizes that something needs to be done really, really quickly. So they can start not only feeding the men, but they can start feeding the horses, which are, they're
they went from feast to famine. I mean, there was an ice cream truck they had. Imagine the guys chasing the ice cream truck. They must have been so happy seeing that. They had a chocolate fountain spraying. They had everything. They had more food than they knew what to do with that. This cracker line opened up. So Bragg and Longstreet, now they're like, well, this whole thing is a mess now. So they end up meeting up at a place called Sunset Rock. And they're going to discuss their next move. And they have to decide what they're going to do. It's going to lead to the next phase, what's called the Wahachi plan. The Wahachi. So
which is a night battle.
It's a night battle. We'll talk about that. But now the initiative is on the Union's got the initiative now. They got the supply line. Now they've got a beachhead. They're at a place now where they have a great, right where Moccasin Bend is, they have cannons there that they can shoot these guys. So there's these great stories about how the Confederates would have to run across between fires or artillery just to get across the fields. They timed it so they wouldn't get hit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the sprinkler when you're in the front backyard trying to run around. And so it's all the initiative now in the strength is on the Union. So Wahachi comes, and it's really going to be Bragg's at this phase of the battle, the pre-Lookout Mountain phase of the battle. This is the part that is really their last shot to try to push them back.
Yeah, and this meeting between Longstreet and Bragg is really, really tense. This is where Liddell comes in again, because he recorded what it was like being there, and actually E.P. Alexander was there as well.
He must have brought his balls.
He did. But anyway, Liddell was there, and he said that Bragg was not at all happy with Longstreet because at Brown's Ferry, Bragg had no idea what was happening, but he was aware of Hooker being at Bridgeport, and he had ordered Longstreet to move additional units into Lookout Valley to cover that shit, and Longstreet ignored it. So Bragg is going up there to meet with Longstreet about what to do next, but also to chew a strip off him as well. So finally, Longstreet's like, well, I could just attack at night. And Bragg's like, well, fine, fucking do it then. Like, whatever.
Yeah, so he's going to attack at night. This is 2 days after Brown's Ferry. So now it's the 29th, right? 10/29/1860.
Yeah, 28 is when it happens.
28th. Okay, right around there. Well, I guess at midnight the 29th. So there, okay.
Yeah. So that's what I said 28, 29th.
We'll just move on.
Fucker.
Wow. This is not even alive and you hit me with that. It's impressive. pinch you.
Okay.
Jesus, go ahead. Anyway, so what? I mean, can we talk about Wahatchee now?
We can.
Practice all day to say this thing correctly. Okay. So this is a couple days after Browns Ferry, and so basically, like to your point, it's going to be a nighttime effort to basically to get them off the northern end of where they are.
Yeah.
So you're going to have Law, okay, our friend from Gettysburg again, okay, and you're going to have Micah Jenkins, who we mentioned before, is the one who replaced John Bell Hood.
Mm-hmm.
But Jenkins isn't even there. It's going to be a guy named John Bratton who's going to be commanding. So a bunch of South Carolinian guys. And what they're going to basically do is they're going to take their two divisions. They're going to cross over the northern tip of Lookout Mountain. They're going to cross Lookout Creek. They're going to have three. They're basically going to have three total brigades that are going to be kind of kept in reserve here. So you're talking about Rock Benning, Georgian, right?
Yep.
Jerome Robertson, Texans, who, again, guys from like the first Texas, and those guys from Gettysburg again. And you're going to have Law's old brigade of Alabamans, okay? They're going to stay in the hills. What they're going to do is they're going to attack with Bratton. They're going to attack with one brigade, and they're going to leave these three, ideally, to catch them, the Union, when they're escaping.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they did 3 and 1, but it actually almost worked. So Bratton's going to basically move. He's going to move just north of the Wahatchee Pike, and in basically where this place is going to be is where John Geary's going to be. So John Geary's got a small little group, mostly Pennsylvania guys, some New York guys, but he's got 4 guns, and they're on a ridge. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is they're warned by a local woman that the Rebs are going to attack that night.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how the hell she knew. The ironic thing about that is her house ended up getting taken down and used for firewood after the battle. So they took her house down. So no good deed goes unpunished, I guess, right? So she warns them there's going to be a night attack from this woman. So the troops are going to sleep on their arms. They're going to be ready to go. 29th Pennsylvania has their pickets. They set up around a full circle around Geary's men. You can see me doing the circle. So you know it's legit. A guy named Colonel Rickards is going to be the guy, and right around midnight or so, the pickets start to fire. You start to hear the pop, pop, pop of the guns, and so it's like the Rebs are about to attack. So Brad and South Carolinians attack. They move out in this open field, and it's midnight. It's late. It's dark. The street lights are off, so you can't see.
Time to go home.
It's time to go home. You're like, oh, come on, kids, lights are. So the only light they see again are these muzzle flashes. So again, it's another example of night fighting in the Civil War. It's the second time we've seen this now, or early morning, late night.
In this area, too.
Right, exactly. And the first South Carolina, they start to take heavy casualties. They realize they're completely unsupported. So right off the bat, this thing's not working out. The timing's not right. They have another group called the Palmetto Sharpshooters. They're supposed to probe the right of Geary's line, and they're late. Hampton's Legion is supposed to extend the 5th South Carolina line, and they're late. And basically, you're left with the 2nd South Carolina, basically finding the left of Geary's line. And what they do is they ultimately find, the story we talked about before we started, they find all the wagons. Yeah. And the wagons are unattached to the animals, right? Yeah. So all the mules and all the animals are unattached. They're just hanging around. All of a sudden, the 2nd South Carolina invades them, charges them. And what happens?
There's a stampede.
Stampede
by these mules. And there's a rumor that goes around the Union camps afterwards that this made the rebels believe that they were being attacked by cavalry, and there was a poem written about it, about these mules, but it was also said that they were breveted as horses afterwards.
Yeah, it's actually
such
a good
an awesome story.
It was, but
so cool.
But all the Teamsters took off. They ran away.
Yeah.
And they ran through the line of the 149th New York, which is one of the guys who, I don't know if he's the one who wrote that poem, but I think someone told him.
Yeah, someone from New York wrote the poem, and it was based off another poem.
Right. I forget how the details that, but it wasn't. The guy who wrote it wasn't actually there. It was someone who told him about it. Yeah. It was like there was like Kevin Bacon degree of separation.
Like the telephone game, you don't know it when it finally gets to you.
Who else is there? It's 137th New York.
Yep.
Speaking of Gettysburg, right?
Hmm.
They're going to protect, they're going to protect the left side of the line.
Yeah.
But again, Bratton's attack, like many of these attacks, is all disjointed. The first South Carolina withdraws. We mentioned Hampton's legions and the Palmetto sharpshooters. They get there staggered late, and that doesn't work out too well. And this is the time of the battle. After a while, like in most battles, you start to see these guys run out of steam. They just, I mean,
Yeah.
the fuck this hits at some point, and that's pretty much what happened with these guys. It was right at this time when, remember I mentioned those 4 guns.
Hmm.
This is Knapp's battery, the 4th the Pennsylvania. They're on the ridge, and they're
Hmm.
going to start firing. Now here's the problem: they're on a ridge. In front of them is their own guys, and then beyond them is the fields, this wheat field, this cornfield thing,
Yeah.
where the South Carolinians are. So they can't use canister
Hmm.
because they're too close. They have to use case shot. And so there's all kinds, so they have to use case shot, they have to use short fuses, and basically you end up with a lot of Pennsylvania guys getting hurt because of the friendly fire. So just picture the things exploding, getting their own guys.
Hmm.
And so that's basically kind of puts a stall to that. Hooker's up the street at Brown's Ferry. He hears what's going on finally. He must have woke up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's where the 11th Corps is.
Yeah, I was going to say, who does he send?
He doesn't tell Howard what he's doing. He sends Schurz.
Mm-hmm. And who else?
Von
Steinwehr.
Von Steinwehr.
Von Steinwehr.
He
Fresh
goes
off
too.
off the ghost tours at Steinwehr Avenue, apparently.
Not Von Schimmelfucker.
No, he is not here today.
No. Howard does eventually get there, though. Hooker finally is like, "Fine, you can go for some cavalry." Because when he sends Schurz, like it's an absolute clusterfuck. Like somebody starts going along the wrong road and all this other stuff, and it's just. But the fact that Hooker goes over Howard, like he totally does what you're supposed to go to the commander first and say, "Can I send?" And Hooker's just basically like, "F that."
But they're going to come, though. They are going to come. But you know what's going to happen? Remember those 3 brigades I mentioned before that were held in reserve?
Yeah.
There's a place that would later be called Smith and Tyndall Hill.
Yeah.
They're going to get them. So you're going to have the 3 brigades left. You're going to have the Alabamans, the Law's Brigade, Jerome Robertson's Texans, and Rock Benning's Georgians. They're going to basically be there. They're going to block the 11th from basically arriving.
Yeah.
So the one thing they did do right was that. Unfortunately, Bratton hears the fighting. Okay, he basically he hears what's going on. He gets a message delivered to him that says, "Roll them up. We're out of here. Let's go."
Yep.
So they end up withdrawing. They back over Lookout Creek.
To Lookout Mountain is where they end up going.
So they get over there. So it's nighttime. It's turning into dawn. It goes all night long, just like Lionel Richie would say. And basically, Brad and South Carolinians lose about 1,500 guys. I mean, out of the 1,500 guys, they lose 300, so they lose quite a bit. Howard's then going to link up with Geary at Brown's Ferry, and help. And what he's going to do at that point is he's going to help strengthen that line to protect for the future attack. So now you've got a really, really strong Wauhatchie. You have a really strong Brown's Ferry, and you've really stabilized again that Cracker line. And you push them back, and you push the Confederates back, and now, really, and like we said before, the battle's over. This shit can't at that point. It's done.
Once the Cracker line is open, like you said, it's over. And each of these things, the reason we wanted to talk about them is because they are important stepping stones into what is going to happen. Like for instance, like after, Wauhatchie, Longstreet is gone. He's headed back east.
Well, you know where he's going first, though, right?
Knoxville.
He's going to Knoxville. Remember what's going on in Knoxville, right?
Burnside.
So Burnside, old Ambrose Burnside is up there, and he's going to basically defend a rail line, and it's going to be a problem for the Confederates because it's going to affect their supply line. So what Bragg wants to do, he's going to send Longstreet, who he hates, and it's addition by subtraction, and Longstreet's like, yes. But Jefferson Davis wants him back in Virginia. So he's like, why don't you, Knoxville's on the way. While you're there, why don't you stop by, beat Burnside, then come back. We'll have a good time. So he's going to go back there. And that's going to create another issue that's going to help ultimately set up Lookout Mountain.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
So
No, I'm saying it does.
And then dropped off for a second. So what's going to happen is Bragg now is he's concerned because he's concerned about this Burnside situation.
Yeah.
He's going to send Longstreet, right? So now he's like, well, I better send Claiborne, I better send Buckner now too.
Yeah, and that's what he does, and
Right.
that's another thing that is starting to lead to Lookout Mountain, and this is
Yeah.
what leads to Orchard Knob, which is November the 23rd.
What do you call me? Anyway, so he's gonna so Claiborne and Buckner are gonna be are out. That's 11,000 guys. Now just run the math here. They started with 50,000 guys.
Yeah.
Now they're purging guys not just because of casualties, but they're setting people away. He's going to send 11,000 of Claiborne and Buckner's guys out. So now Grant. Now Grant's like, what the hell's going on now?
They see them marching away,
Right.
and he's like, what the fuck is he doing now?
He's Longstreet go, and now he sees Claiborne go, and now he sees Buckner go. He's like, all right, something's afoot at the Circle K.
So General Thomas orders General Thomas J. Wood, who, if you'll remember from our episodes about Chickamauga, he's the guy that got that unfortunate order to fucking move his division, which caused the breakthrough, which Longstreet went through, which is odd that he's now trying to get back at Longstreet. So he orders Wood to go do some reconnaissance work, and their objective is going to be this spot called Orchard Knob. And so what happens here is Wood gets up there. Sheridan is going to protect Wood's flank, and Howard's 11th Corps, my boy OO again, makes an appearance. He extends the line to the left. So there's 20,000 Union soldiers up here. And around 1:30 p.m., 14,000 of them are just going to move forward and stun 600 rebels and drive them away. And Orchard Knob becomes the headquarters for Grant and Thomas for the remainder of the battles for Chattanooga. And Bragg all of a sudden changes his strategy, and as Claiborne is getting his men on the train, he gets a message that says, dude, you need to come back. Get back on Missionary Ridge.
Anybody within 1 day's march, get your ass back.
Claiborne is probably like, fuck.
Claiborne's on the train going, fucking Jesus, I guess I left. So he's got to get back. So now everything's kind of moving in flux again. So now everyone's coming back. So they're coming, they're going. Again, it shows that whole miscommunication thing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about Orchard Knob, and this is one thing that's kind of funny, is it starts off with the reconnaissance. So Thomas Wood does his reconnaissance.
Yeah.
They view the Rebs about 2,000 yards away. Now he's going to bring Sheridan up to Wood's right flank. And then he's going to have Howard extend the left. So like you mentioned a few minutes ago, they got 20,000 guys there.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, obviously it turns in from a reconnaissance mission more to basically a disruption mission now.
Yeah, you need to get the fuck off of this area because we're taking it, and we have more men than you.
So this is the 23rd of November. So at 1:30 p.m., there are 14,000 are going to attack the Rebs, and they're going to hold the ground. And ironically, it's that ground where they attack is going to become Grant and Thomas's headquarters during the battle too, right? So they end up moving. So he moves William T. Walker from Lookout Mountain to Missionary Ridge. And all this time, they still don't know what Sherman's doing. Bragg doesn't know if Sherman's going to Knoxville. Bragg's pretty convinced he is going to Knoxville, but instead, right?
Yeah, Sherman's in Chattanooga at that point, but they just don't know where he's going.
They just don't, so they don't know where he's going.
He and Grant have a plan to where he's going to be going on the 24th.
Right, but Bragg, doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know. He doesn't know where Sherman's going. He still thinks he's probably going to Knoxville, but now they don't know. So Bragg's going to move. He's going to take Hardin. He's going to command the right flank. He's going to have Carter Stevenson on the left flank, and Breckinridge is going to be on the center. And then you know what happens? The Union plan changes again.
Yeah.
Because another freak in nature, which is going to change the whole battle, right?
Yep, it does.
Which is when Sherman is basically going to be coming back. One of his guys is Osterhaus's division. Yep. The boats break. Mm-hmm. The pontoons break, and they get stuck. It's like Ebenezer Creek, sort of. Most of the army is on one side of the river. Osterhaus can't get across. Now he's stuck there. So Grant decides, well, I'm going to take your troops I'm going to take you from Sherman. I'm going to put you with Hooker now.
Mm-hmm.
And Hooker is going to YOLO it and say, I'm going to go up Lookout Mountain.
Yeah, he is. And what happens is, so Hooker has been initially told by Grant, to do a demonstration around Lookout Mountain in an attempt to start to drive the rebels off there, to maybe scare them off, because Stevenson doesn't have that many men up there. But Hooker also doesn't have the men to do a full-on battle. Now, in Grant's original order, he does say basically the whole, if practicable, you can do the demonstration. Hooker wants to do a demonstration. You have to keep in mind, like, Hooker's finally come out of his concussion that he was in, and he's wanting to redeem himself from what has happened at Chancellorsville.
Mm-hmm.
There's two people at this battle that are wanting to do that, Hooker and Howard. Mm-hmm. So with what happens with Osterhaus, that gives Hooker enough men to be able to do a full-on battle. And that's when when that happens, when Osterhaus is given the order to go join Hooker's men, that's when Thomas tells Hooker, the general commanding, meaning General Grant, directs that you endeavor to take the point of Lookout Mountain. Mm-hmm. And that's all Hooker needs.
Yeah, all because Osterhaus, the boat sank.
Yep.
And, we're going to talk obviously more about Lookout Mountain in part 2 of this extravaganza. But it just goes to show again how fate can change anything, right?
Yep.
How the fact that Chattanooga is very foggy is going to help them, to take Browns Ferry, right? It's going to help Hazen's guys. It's going to mask them. The fact that the whole point of the beginning part of the battle was getting pontoon boats to get supplies, and they were benefited by the pontoon boats breaking. So you want to go to a casino with anybody. You want to go with these guys at Chattanooga.
Osterhaus.
You want to take Osterhaus, okay? Because you'll win the house with Osterhaus. What's in there?
I'd be taking Osterhaus and Hooker, because then I'm guaranteed a good time.
Oh, gee, well, there you go, right? I'll just stay home and hang out. You have a good time. But basically, it's just one of those things where, again, anything that came after Browns Ferry is complete window dressing, because that was it.
Yeah, Browns Ferry was what set it all off to happen.
It did, because once they got it armed and once they got the supplies, it was done. Should Bragg have taken off at that point? Yeah, hindsight being your benefactor, certainly.
Yeah.
I think he knew the writing was on the wall, because he really had to. I mean, going back to Bragg, he only had 2 choices. He could either frontal attack, or he could siege. He chose siege, which is probably the right call at the time.
It was half-assed, though.
Right.
He's not fucking sieging them. He's not sieging them in the same way Grant did. He's not bombing the shit out of them, and they're not using the wallpaper for newsprint.
No, I think part of it, though, is I don't think that Bragg wanted to bomb one of his own cities. I think that was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that he saw those mountains and realized that if I can have Wheeler and I can just terrorize the one road, they're not going to get their supplies.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole thing changed when they were able to push off the 15th Alabama and Oates' guys off of Browns Ferry, because that changed the whole thing.
No.
And at that point, it wasn't a siege anymore. Now it was a battle. You're still outnumbered. You're still about 20,000 guys. You're outnumbered, and now you're still sending your guys off on a fun run. Still, they're also all over the place. They're all spread out. You got Breckinridge, who was pissed that he was in his location. He didn't like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Stevenson's mad because he's on Lookout Mountain. He hated that location because it was vulnerable. So you have this constant infighting, and throughout the entire thing is Longstreet, who is ignoring half the orders, right? And what's funny about Longstreet here is isn't this a pattern with him now at this point?
It is. It's showing a pattern.
I mean, you're starting to see a pattern with Longstreet.
He's like, what the hell?
He isn't a general of the army. He's a pissed off temp in the accounting department at this point. Yes. That's who he is, right?
Well, he's like, he tells Bragg what to do. He suggests something to Bragg after Chickamauga. He's like, okay, we need to do this. We need to do a whole movement thing. And Bragg is like, no, that's really dumb. And Bragg was right for once.
Yeah.
And Longstreet was just pissed off after that. And then at Browns Ferry, Bragg went to him and was like, okay, I know where Hooker is. Could you move your troops there? And Longstreet is like, nah, I don't think I will.
Oh yeah, but you saw it on the Union side. You see Sheridan. I mean, not Sheridan. Uh, you had old Uncle Blingy.
Yeah.
Sherman. He's ignoring Thomas's orders
Oh
because
yeah.
he's up there doing his railroad thing.
And
And
Thomas is
he
like,
says,
could you fucking not and get down
"Can you
here?
get your ass down?" We'll see. So there's a lot of that. But I think the moral of the story was Longstreet clearly didn't want to be there. I mean,
No.
he wanted to get back to Virginia so he can beat a Virginia and show Lee he didn't want to be there either. That's the other thing.
Yep.
But this is twice now, within about a 4-month period where Longstreet again just doesn't listen to orders and he doesn't take any ownership and then he blames people. So what I'm saying is, look, I like Longstreet. I think
I do
I
too.
think he's a good general, but there's a pattern with this guy
Hmm.
now. I mean, it just is. And so,
It's like
um,
drama follows him.
and that's the one thing I will say. That's the one thing that Lee didn't have. He didn't have a lot of this publicly anyway. You didn't
No.
have you didn't have people writing a petition to get General Lee removed,
No. Well, I mean, if like where
right?
there's Braxton Bragg, that's why I say it's kind of like Dallas. It's like it's the ultimate because Dallas brought the ultimate level of drama. Braxton Bragg and the AOT is the ultimate level of drama in the Civil War,
Like when
especially this.
they thought Bragg died and they saw him in the shower at the beginning of the next season.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that.
exactly it. They're like, oh shit, he's back.
And the whole thing was a dream.
Yeah. Have we won? Maybe we've won.
Oh wow! I guess I could order that quartermaster order now and not turn myself down. But I think the moral of the story is you took a Union army that was led by Rosecrans, who was in some sort of shell, some sort of PTSD situation coming out of Chickamauga.
Hmm.
Grant comes down. You want to say saves the day because he kind of did take Rosecrans's orders and
Yeah,
plan.
and he
He
took
took it as his
took
own.
credit for
Um,
them. Yeah, that's
he
shitty.
did, and then but again, you know what? It all worked because at
It
the end of the
did.
day, we don't want to give away the story because next week we're going to be going back to the second half of Chattanooga.
Yeah,
But there's a pretty good chance it's going to turn out pretty well for the Union at this
yeah.
point. We'll talk more about that later. But I think it's a good place to drop off, Mary. I think that
Hmm.
we'll leave these guys where they are. We'll leave the Confederates position themselves on Lookout Mountain and on Missionary Ridge,
Hmm.
setting up a defensive situation. And we'll
Yeah,
leave Joe Hooker getting ready to attack Lookout Mountain, getting ready to redeem himself for Chancellorsville.
yeah, because he's got
And
Osterhouse now, which I just want to add. So, I mean, I completely agree with you about Browns Ferry. That is the most important thing to happen in this, but the second most important thing is Osterhouse.
well, it's
Without
just
Osterhouse, you cannot have Lookout Mountain.
no, it would have been, and you wonder how that would have happened, what they would have done.
Yeah.
You have to think Sherman's original plan to attack Missionary Ridge, what if that would have been their plan?
Hmm.
They would have attacked a fortified, strong Confederate position. I mean, it could have been a Cold Harbor all over again. It could have been a slaughter.
Exactly. Yep.
But because the pontoon boat sank and Osterhouse couldn't get across the river, he goes with Hooker. And Hooker really redeems himself. And we'll talk more about some of the things that Grant does that don't redeem him, that
Yeah,
don't exactly make himself look
we're gonna
good.
talk about Lookout Mountain in the next episode and what else
Yeah.
goes on, and probably well, obviously Missionary Ridge too. This might end up, as I said, becoming a threesome. I don't
Oh,
know.
well, I'll leave that. Yeah,
Could
we'll see how
be.
that goes.
Yeah, it could
We'll see how
be.
that goes. Nothing better than a threesome with old Braxton Bragg. That's for damn sure. Thanks for that. Thanks for that future. That's
Yep.
that's why we don't call you Nightmare for nothing. That's for sure. But anyway, that's a great place to drop off. So we will
Yep.
watch it now. Look out for the next episode and see if we can make a mountain out of a molehill going into episode 2 of Chattanooga. So what do you think,
Yep.
huh? What do you think?
I think that's a good place to drop off for tonight.
I
So
think it
thank
is.
you
I
all for
think it is.
listening.
Thanks for all putting up with us. So again, we will have our live. This will drop Saturday morning.
Yep.
And we will have our live on 10 o'clock a.m. on Saturday talking about this and whatever you feel like talking about. We expect to talk about a fantastic roundtable that's going to be happening. So definitely hope you enjoyed that because it'll be in the past tense when we do this.
Yep.
And we will get back at this again next Tuesday to talk about the second half or the second portion, depending on how we want to do this.
Yep.
But we'll go forward that. But hey, good talk. Always a lot of fun talking about
Awesome.
our old friends back in the Civil War again. So,
Yep.
Any parting words for you?
No, just thanks everyone for your continued support with this. And yeah, we will definitely see you next week for some more of Chattanooga.
We will. Excellent. So we will talk to you all soon.
All right. See you guys later.
Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.